Ambassador Extraordinary
Владимир, слышно ли нас? Вы меня слышите? Так, а слышу ли я вас?
Меня слышно? Все в порядке?
Да, теперь нам вас слышно.
Так, спасибо.
Спасибо. Пожалуйста, оставайтесь на связи, не меняйте конфигурацию.
Мне презентацию только бы вывести как-то. Может быть, кто-то сможет загрузить. Спасибо.
Dear Excellencies, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, let us to start today's side event. First of all, I'm delighted on behalf of the Eurasian Economic Commission, the supranational body of the Eurasian Economic Union, which unites 5 countries, Armenia, Belarus, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and Russia, to welcome all of you at our side event, Regional Capacity for the SDGs, Partnership for the Goals in the framework of the high-level political forum on sustainable development. First of all, let me to thank all the speakers who joined us today in person and online. And I would like to mention the great support provided by our co-organizers, the permanent missions of the Republic of Belarus and the Russian Federation. As you know, this year the Russian Federation took over the chairmanship of the Eurasian Economic Union bodies. The main focus of our discussion is the regional dimension of the SDGs, the importance of fostering coherence between local and global levels and identify important points of interest towards interregional cooperation. When we talk about the regional dimension of the SDGs, it is clear that the key actors here are international organizations that monitor the implementation of SDG indicators, as well as regional economic associations that make a significant contribution to the achievement of the SDGs with their regulatory framework and integration projects. And therefore, I would like to thank all the representatives of regional associations and the UN regional commissions for joining us together. I hope that we will have a fruitful discussion together. In 2021, we have organized already such event devoted to the regional dimension of SDGs in Geneva. And in March this year, we had such an event organized in Bangkok. And I would like to emphasize once again that it is important to have here the representatives of our member countries. And on behalf of the Eurasian Economic Commission, I would like once again to thank the member countries of the Eurasian Economic Union for joining us today. And especially I would like to thank the Republic of Belarus, which already in 2016 paid attention to the potential correlation between the goals of the Eurasian Economic Union and the SDGs. And I would like to thank the Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Belarus, Mr. Yuri Ambrazevich, to be here today in person. And Mr. Ambrazevich, I would like to give the floor for the welcoming speech. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Madam Director and Moderator, and
dear colleagues, dear Madam Assistant UN Secretary General, dear Olga Algairova, distinguished colleagues, I'm delighted to address you at the opening of this side event on regional capacity for the Sustainable Development Goals organized under the auspices of the Eurasian Economic Commission on the margins of the 2023 High-Level Political Forum on Sustainable Development. Many analysts believe that in the medium term the world will become a world of macro-regions, interstate economic associations focused on economic integration within a specific geographical region or sub-region. The focus on self-sufficiency and high economic resilience to external shocks, effective governance based on a clear distribution of powers between national and supranational competencies, synergetic effects of such complementarity, including in industrial cooperation. These are the qualities that will allow macro-regions to become an effective alternative to the current globalization, ultimately ensuring a more equitable distribution of resources and incomes and inclusive involvement of all people in effective and sustainable development. The Eurasian Economic Union has every chance of becoming one of the macro regions. The recent pandemic crisis tested the resilience of our union and our region and revealed both areas that still need work and areas where post-pandemic recovery has been more advanced. In this regard, it is encouraging that recovery of economic relations of Belarus after the pandemic was more active with its EAEU partners. It is also worth mentioning separately that regional integration within the EAEU is in particular one of the main factors that allowed the Republic of Belarus to adequately resist the unilateral coercive measures imposed on my country by the United States and the European Union. It should not be assumed that Belarus considers regional economic integration as a panacea for solving the problem of sustainable economic growth and sustainable development. Undoubtedly, a macro region cannot exist without integration into the global economy. At the same time, it is obvious that the quality of the Eurasian Economic Union's international status depends on the internal quality of integration. The processes of internal development of the Union, as well as any other macro regions, the formation of a multipolar world, and the Union's finding its place in this new world will occur in parallel. Interaction between macro regions or new poles will be maximally successful and endowed with all necessary tools, provided that it is equal and implemented in accordance with the norms of international treaties binding for all partners. In this context, it is interesting that in May 2021, a high-level international online conference on harnessing inter-regional integration for the attainment of the Sustainable Development Goals, organized by Belarus in partnership with UNCTAD, was attended by all significant regional integration associations and international organizations, with the only exception, with two exceptions in fact, of the European Union and USMCA. Apparently, representatives of these organizations are absent in this audience today too. It seems that this once again proves that the governments of countries in North America and Western Europe are focused on developing the world in a different scenario, on preserving their hegemony. The participants in 2021 conference that I mentioned agreed that the regional integration projects united by trade and development are interested in exploring best practices in institution building and external mechanisms of cooperation. And I believe that the topic of such interaction, we call it in our internal language, integration of integrations, can find its place in the work of ECOSOC and on the margins of the high-level political forum, just as it had already happened in Geneva on the platform of UNCTAD. I suggest that the Eurasian Economic Union continues to lead the UN in promoting the topic of integration of integrations. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Obarzevich, for your interesting speech. And once again, I would like to highlight the huge work that during your service in Geneva you did for initiating and promoting discussions on the regional dimension of the SDGs. Thank you very much. Dear colleagues, dear guests, as I mentioned, this year the Russian Federation took the chairmanship in the highest bodies of the Eurasian Economic Union. As I highlighted already, the Eurasian Economic Commission gives great importance the assistance that we get from our member states in the work in this direction. Chairman of the Supreme Eurasian Economic Council, the President of the Russian Federation, Mr. Vladimir Putin, in May in the Leaders Summit put forward an initiative to strengthen financial sovereignty of the Eurasian Economic Union by providing a stable credit and banking infrastructure, developing and harmonizing the Eurasian financial market. For this purpose, it is proposed to establish a Eurasian rating agency, which would ensure the availability of adequate assessment tools to serve the growing economic activity in Eurasia. The Russian president also proposed to consider the possibility to add to the existing four freedoms, the fifth freedom. This is the freedom of knowledge based on the general principles and standards of education, healthcare, and public administration, which would contribute to the full realization of human capital to a higher extent. Dear colleagues, for welcoming speech, now I would like to give floor to the Deputy Permanent Representative of Russia to the United Nations, Mr. Dmitry Chumakov. The floor is yours.
Dear Guar, thank you very much. Уважаемый Сергей Юрьевич, уважаемый Юрий Георгиевич, dear colleagues and friends, thank you very much for coming to our side event. I would like to say that it's important that I will share my impressions about HLPF that has started. This year high-level forum is very much dominated by the trend of localization and regionalization of the SDGs. It has become very noticeable. This is not surprising. At the equator of the path to achieve the SDGs, we can talk about 15% success at best. And in order to quickly complement the missing 85%, a paradigm shift will obviously be required. Efforts of individual country development, in our opinion, will not give the effect that we would like to have. And we in our Eurasian microregion, on the contrary, are striving to unite efforts on the basis of a synergistic approach and complementarity. Importantly, the concept of building the greater Eurasian partnership goes well beyond a single trade, transport, or logistic framework, but has a continuation in the ASEAN countries, SCO countries, and of course access to Europe. Within the framework of EAEU, SCO, BRICS, we should make full use of our own market and resource advantages, actively master settlements in national currencies, and build new logistics and transport routes. Excellencies, there is an acute shortage of dialogue, cooperation, and mutual understanding. Under these conditions, of course, the role of regional, trans-regional organizations and associations is growing day by day. It is delightful to see today with us representatives of countries from all over the world, including our partners from EAEU, SCO, BRICS, that have pretty much the similar philosophy of equitable cooperation and functioning. Needless to say, amid blocking of trade settlements and interruptions in transport logistics, increasing obstacles to business cooperation between the countries and break in production chains, regional settlements would contribute to resilience and stability. All in all, the idea of developing the greater Eurasian partnership based on the principles of voluntary approach and taking into account the interests of each country deserves further promotion. Let me express hope that this event will become an input into such promotion and wish you a knowledgeable and useful discussion today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chumakov, for your welcoming speech. Dear colleagues, I would suggest to start the main part of our discussion. Kindly request to our speakers to take the floor and to make speech within 7-9 minutes because we have lots of speakers in order our colleagues could make reports. And now I would like to give the floor to our keynote speaker from the Moscow, the headquarters of the Eurasian Economic Union, Minister for Integration and Macroeconomics of the Eurasian Economic Commission, Mr. Sergei Glazyev. The floor is yours, Mr. Minister.
Thank you, Gor. Excellencies, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. Provides countries with additional opportunities to make significant progress in the implementation of the United Nations agenda for achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. Removing trade barriers, increasing cooperation, stimulating mutual investments, we promote sustainable development. In particular, cooperation of the member states in the regulation of labor migration within the Union contributes to a more efficient distribution of labor force, unemployment reduction, as well as establishment of decent working conditions for citizens. Integration and liberalization of markets of goods, services, and capital stimulates business development and increases public access to a wide range of services, including financial, thus contributing to the healthy competition. A significant contribution to the achievement of the SDG by the Eurasian Economic Union member states was made by the digital agenda of the Union. Digital initiatives are being implemented within the Eurasian Economic Union, in particular, the unified search system Work Without Borders, which significantly speeds up the job search process, as well as the ecosystem of digital transport corridors and the Eurasian Network of Industrial Cooperation, designed to speed up the process of bringing the new products to the market and strengthening cooperation with the third countries. One of the most important sustainable development goals proclaimed by the United Nations is the seventh goal, ensuring universal access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy sources for all. In this regard, the Eurasian Economic Union is aiming to form common markets for oil products, electricity, gas, and as you know, we are major exporters of these commodities. The strengthening of the integration process in the Eurasian economic space has a positive impact on the development of infrastructure and increase in mutual trade, removing barriers, growth in the utilization of production capacities, and increase in the income of the population, as well as increase in the investment attractiveness of the member states. In the meantime, I'd like to share with you some positive trends in the Eurasian Economic Union on the achieving sustainable development goals. Our analysis shows that 149 out of 515 SDGs goals, objectives, and principles are fully covered by the Eurasian Economic Union. In some areas, the member states and Union as a whole are already at the high level of the development, including a number of indicators for the goal number 1, no poverty, number 2, zero hunger, number 3, good health and well-being, number 8, decent work and economic growth, number 11, make cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. Among those indicators with high level of implementation in the Eurasian Economic Union, I would like to mention the goal of reducing to zero the population of living below the international poverty level line has been practically achieved. The goal number 2, since the establishment of the Union, the share of food expenditures in the total household consumption expenditures in the most member states has been declining, which indicates the increase in the availability of food and food for the population of the member states, which also means moving towards achieving the goal ending hunger. I'd like to share with you some indicators which shows that the poverty level in our countries is declining. The consumption of meat and meat products is growing up, as well as other major products. The index of real incomes of population is growing up. I'd like to mention also that we already have the share of social expenditures, including education, healthcare, social protection, more than 1/2 of the full of the gross government expenditures. We already reached the high level of the goal number 3, good health and well-being, in terms of increasing the number of medical doctors in the Eurasian Economic Union member states, including the skilled health professional density, which is have a rather high level in the most of Eurasian Economic Union countries. We provide almost all schools and education organizations by electricity and other utilities. We reached gender equality among the labor force. About half of the labor force are women. We achieved the compulsory access to electricity. The goal number 9, the value added in the high-tech sectors is growing up. However, we still are lagging behind the most developed countries by the share of research and development expenditures in GDP. Unfortunately, I'm not able to show your presentation, but I hope Guar can distribute our report of Sustainable Development Goals in Eurasian Economic Union since the year 2017 to the year 2029. I just refer to these figures. We have success in the goal number 8, decent work and economic growth. For instance, we have steady decline of unemployment rate. We also have a boom in construction, and ratio of building rates and population growth rates are going up. Now I want to draw your attention to the goal number 2, which is highly dependent on the ongoing hybrid war, which was organized by the United States and NATO member countries against our region. This hybrid war had a significant impact on the ability to grow wheat and transport to the places of consumption, as well as on the trade policy of these products in general. Traditional markets for these products have entered a phase of great uncertainty. The yields in Ukraine decreased about 38%. The export of food from Eurasian Economic Union member states to foreign market, primarily wheat and flour, as well as mineral fertilizers for growing wheat and vegetables, was a strong point of our economy, and now the export of these commodities is under sanctions and suffering because of the sanctions imposed by the European Union and the United States. I'd like to mention that together, Russia and Kazakhstan are exporting more wheat than Canada and the United States. We are the major producers of wheat and major exporters. As well, our countries are the major exporters of the mineral fertilizers, especially Belarus and Russia. As you know, the mineral fertilizers are very important for the developing countries. If you combine together the wheat export and wheat products export, grain export, and mineral fertilizers export, I can tell you that we provide food for about 70 million people, 700 million people in the world. In general, we are talking about the ability to feed about 1 billion people. The modern technologies which we have give us opportunity to increase food production, but by 5 times. And according to the research results in land productivity, which were achieved by the scientists from the Moscow University, proved that the present technologies for land cultivating can produce food for 25 billion people. It means that the major reason for hunger is not the problem of land productivity or overpopulation, but is the result of an uneven and unjust distribution system. American and European trading companies artificially increase prices using their monopoly power. For example, as you know, the grain deal finished yesterday. What we see, according to the grain deal, the prices for wheat from Black Sea regions are about $100 per ton or less than in Europe and the prices of export from Europe and the United States, which means that American and European trading companies taking the opportunity for our grain deal buy the wheat in prices for 250 and sell 350. So they use the monopoly power to increase prices, and this deal has nothing to do with the hunger in Africa. The sanctions increased barriers in the trade of wheat, and the Western countries imposing sanctions give to us less opportunities to provide the African countries, the Near and Middle East countries, by the cheap wheat. Sanctions provoke shortages, price increases, and fragment global markets. Most importantly, with the actions, the West hinder the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals number 2. We are ready to increase export of wheat to the world market. We can increase the export of mineral fertilizers, and we can provide more and more efforts to achieve the second Sustainable Development Goals. Another point which I'd like to mention is the monitoring of the Sustainable Development Goals. Our Commission is publishing a statistical brochure achieving Sustainable Development Goals in the Eurasian Economic Union region each year. We are constantly working on increasing the number of indicators that can be calculated with the framework of integration association. Taking into account the best international practices, we are working on convergence of approaches for the collection and calculation of the relevant SDG indicators in our countries as well as in the other countries. Last year, we agreed on the regional list of indicators for achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, which will become the basis for monitoring the achievement of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals in the countries of the Eurasian Economic Union. Thus, we are going to conduct monitoring about 130 indicators, 63 of which relate to the global level and 67 to the regional level. This list is updated. I'd like to tell a few words also about the necessity to increase the number of indicators concerning the ecological issues and climate change indicators. Formally, our countries fulfill all the obligations according to the climate change Paris Agreement, and we all together reduce greenhouse gas emission. However, the global warming continues. The ozone holes increasing, in spite of the fact that the production of freon almost closed. We see now that Montreal Protocol was based on the falsification of data and manipulation of public opinion. We closed several branches of chemical industry and undermined the compatibility of national economy. For what reason? Who will pay for these losses? Our scientists discover that ozone holes are created by the hydrogen emission from the core of the Earth. They also discovered that the key role in global warming is placed by the change in the angle of the Earth's axis. Another factors which play an important role is the emission of hydrogen and the warming coming from the ocean and Earth's surface by the isotope 40 of potassium. These two factors play the major role. We have to monitor all these factors. We have to increase our opportunities to control the global warming. We should include in the list of climate changes monitoring the hydrogen emission the potash is a top 40 factor of global warming, and the changes in the Earth's axis. Otherwise, all our efforts to reach the zero carbon neutrality could be wasted. The climate monitoring should be continued in spite of all our efforts. We can reduce the greenhouse gases, but we couldn't reduce all other factors. For this reason, we have to be very careful in monitoring the climate change in order to prepare ourselves for the global warming, which will continue, and for the more friction of natural catastrophes. We have concentrated our efforts in struggle with the real problems to achieve sustainable development goals. The major problem is the unjust world financial system, privatized by United States and other NATO countries, using the monopoly of money creation as a weapon in the world hybrid war to maintain their dominance. We have to change to the new world financial system, which should be justful. No one country or institution monopoly should have a right to use money creation as a tool in any kind of political pressure. It should be transparent, and it should be ruled by the law. According to these principles, our experts propose the creation of the new world currency based on two baskets: the national currencies of participating countries and commodities. This new currency for current account transactions should be introduced in digital form using blockchain on the basis of international treaty. The model of this currency was introduced in Astana Economic Forum about 10 years ago and shows its capability to stabilize prices, and it is very convenient and safe. It can guarantee us from the financial terrorism conducted by the United States and European countries, which privatize the money creation, and can be a good instrument for the sustainable development goals achievements. The second point, the unfair behavior of the trade monopolies which increase food prices. We should control the food prices and finish this unfair competition. The third point, the corruption in international agencies, which are manipulated by lobbyists in favor of private interests of American and European corporations. Finally, dear colleagues, I should stress again that as for Eurasian Economic Union member states and Union as a whole, it is no doubt that we continue our work to achieve sustainable development goals. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Minister, for your very interesting and large report. Continuing our discussion, I would like to stress that the dialogue between the regional associations, that it is paid a great attention at the deepening of the dialogue between different international organizations and associations during our work with third parties. And in this context, today it is very important to have our traditional partner with us, the Deputy Secretary General of ASEAN for ASEAN Socio-Cultural Community, Mr. Ekapap Pantavok, who shared the video message with us. Before hearing Mr. Deputy Secretary General's message, I would like to stress that ASEAN is the traditional and very important partner of the Eurasian Economic Union, with whom we have signed a memorandum of understanding and an action plan. We have a very intensive dialogue with the ASEAN Secretariat as well as the separate countries of ASEAN. We have signed memorandum of understandings and agreements of free trade zone. So I would like all of us to hear the video message from ASEAN Secretariat. Please.
Excellency Vasily Nebenza, Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary, Permanent Representative of Russia to the United Nations, Her Excellency Larisa Belskaya, Ambassador and Permanent Representative of the Republic of Belarus to the United Nations, Mr. Sergei Krashev, Member of the Board of the Eurasian Economic Commission, distinguished speakers, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to extend my appreciation to the Eurasian Economic Commission for organizing this society event and for providing me the opportunity to share the experience of ASEAN on attending the SDGs. At the outset, let me highlight that ASEAN attaches the highest importance to achieving the sustainable development. This is well reflected in the ASEAN Community Vision 2025, which underlines the complementarity between United Nations 2030 the Agenda for Sustainable Development and the ASEAN Community building efforts to uplift the standards of the living of our peoples. Thailand, as the ASEAN coordinator for the sustainable development, has been leading the implementation of the Complementarities Initiative. This resulted in the development of the Complementarities Roadmap 2020 to 2025, which was launched at the 35th ASEAN Summit. The key areas of cooperation in the roadmap cover the following. 1. Poverty eradication. 2. Infrastructure and connectivity. 3. Sustainable management of the natural resources. 4. Sustainable consumption. And 5. Capacity building on ASEAN's experts and the relevant institutions. The Complementarities Initiative also mandated the establishment of the ASEAN Center for Sustainable Development Studies and Dialogue. The center promotes the research on sustainable development and supports dialogue within ASEAN and between ASEAN and external parties on sustainable development cooperation. The center monitors the Complementarities Roadmap in collaboration with ASCAP and the ASEAN Secretariats. Various initiatives have been undertaken by the ASEAN sectoral bodies across the three pillars of ASEAN, namely ASEAN the Political the Security Community, ASEAN the Economic Community, and the ASEAN Social Cultural Community to foster the implementation of the two agendas. Our concerted actions have contributed to making the progress in several goals. The 2022 the ASEAN the SDG the snapshot report recorded that despite the negative impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic, particularly the economic contractions, most of the social outcomes improved. The opportunities have increased, especially in terms of the internet access. As an example, ASEAN made promising progress for some of the indicators under SDG 2 on the zero hunger, SDG 3 on good health and well-being, SDG 4 on the quality education, and SDG 17 on the partnership for the goals. Regional platforms to promote the cooperation on the SDGs include the ASEAN Ministerial Dialogue on accelerating the action to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, and the high-level brainstorming dialogue on the enhancing the complementarities between the ASEAN Community Vision 2025 and the 2030 the Agenda for Sustainable Development. The second ASEAN Ministerial Dialogue and the seventh high-level brainstorming dialogue were held on the 31st March 2023 and provided a strategic opportunity for ASEAN to revisit and exchange views on our policies and the programs on SDGs. Our strong partnership also helps us strengthen the regional integration and build an integrated economy that aims to uplift the livelihoods of our people while managing the resources for our future generation. In 2021, our GDP growth rebounded to 3.4%. From the contraction of the 3.2% in 2020, allowing the ASEAN to maintain its position as the fifth largest economy in the world, with the 3.3 trillion USD combined GDP. Ladies and gentlemen, long-lasting impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic, coupled with mega trends such as climate change, aging societies, digitalization, and the rapid urbanization, to put these achievements under threat and bring more challenges for our journey ahead. To this end, it is crucial for the international community to strengthen the partnership, including the South-South cooperation to foster the inclusive and sustainable development. For ASEAN, the past 7 years have told us that the government alone will not be able to successfully deliver the targets under the 17 goals. All the stakeholders and local communities must be involved throughout the process, from the program to planning, to monitoring and evaluation. Women are among the groups that were often unable to have their voices heard, while leaving no one behind is the core of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. It is important to ensure the meaningful participation of the women in the SDG decision making and the mainstreaming the gender perspective across the 17 goals. Furthermore, our experience shows that timely, accurate, and the quality data are the prerequisite for successful implementation of the SDGs, especially to monitor the progress and design the more impactful interventions. Through the ASEAN Working Group on SDG indicators, ASEAN continuously strengthens the data system for the SDGs. Indeed, our way is far from perfect, and I hope that we could learn from the experiences of other countries and regions. With these points, I conclude my remarks and wish you the fruitful discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Today we have the pleasure to hear from Ms. Olga Algayarova, the Executive Secretary of the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe. The Eurasian Economic Commission is closely collaborating with the UNIS on issues related to the implementation of the UN Sustainable Development Strategy until 2040, the development of new recommendations taking into account the epidemiological situation leading to the revision of existing and the development of new standards. The Eurasian Economic Commission is also a frequent participant at the UNES regional forums on sustainable development. And I would like to thank Ms. Algayarova, you for being here with us, and the floor is yours.
Yes. Thank you, Madam Moderator, Excellencies, dear colleagues, dear friends. Thank you for having me here today. As correctly mentioned, today in 2023, we are on the halfway to 2030. And already today, it's absolutely clear that we have a long way to meet the SDGs. I recall our UNEC, or United Nations Economic Commission for Europe, regional SDG report published in March 2023, and you will see that we are really regressing on Agenda 2030. So this insufficient progress should lead us to seriously consider how we can accelerate the implementation. For that, we will have our SDG summit in September this year here in New York. And such reflections should have multiple reflections and dimensions which are interrelated. So 3 points from my side. First, we should broaden the focus beyond the performance regarding specific goals to consider the interactions between them. So I believe also the DSG of ASEAN was speaking about the systemic view that is important and should accompany other efforts with a more limited scope. So indeed, in nature, the SDGs are interrelated with multiple synergies, but also trade-offs sometimes among them. And if we want acceleration, this requires identifying entry points that don't fragment the integrated character of 2030 agenda, but take advantage of these existing synergies. I give you an example. These were our Commission session topics, for instance, circular economy. So we have so many SDGs in there. Or the last one in April this year, it was digital and green transformations for sustainable development again. So, but we know that sometimes we need also involve difficult trade-off across different dimensions, sectoral, local, regional, national, and also temporal. Sequencing of interventions is therefore critical. This is why policy coherence is essential to ensure more rapid progress to take place, and why we need to focus our attention on areas with transformational impact. And you know, we have at the UN our 6 transitions on food, energy, climate change, social job creation, and education. So these are the transformational areas. These trailblazers, which should reflect national circumstances and regional context, drive and open the way for other positive changes. So my second point is, we need also to be aware that it is not possible to build islands of sustainability. This is a dangerous illusion that should be avoided if we want to address our common challenges effectively. Continued attention to the coherence between domestic and external policies is therefore necessary. There is a need to understand and address transboundary impacts, and this is what we at Regional Commission are doing. A paramount example is, for instance, management of water that we discussed just before this meeting, water is a common resource with a clear transboundary dimension. Globally, more than 3 billion people depend on water that crosses national borders. And this makes transboundary water cooperation, which is an area where UNEC is deeply engaged, a crucial foundation for sustainable development. But climate change will have negative consequences for water supply and quality that will test existing systems and increase the need for collaborative efforts. Signs of growing stress are already evident. And ladies and gentlemen, the third point from my side. We need to work at all levels. Global, regional, local, engage all actors, both public, private, the implementation of that can mobilize that required resources for effective action. Please let me elaborate further on this third point and more specifically on the reasons I believe that the regional level can make an important contribution to the implementation of the SDGs. Our work at the regional level can be the more immediate and potentially fruitful approach to make progress in dealing with cross-border issues and reduce those transboundary risks. At this level, the positive outcomes of concerted action may become more apparent and therefore lead to concrete initiatives. Key drivers for prosperity, such as trade or transport links, need to be understood first on a regional perspective and can be enhanced by regional initiatives. Exactly, we at UNEC has been engaged in assisting our 56 member states in reaping the benefits of closer integration through trade facilitation and the digitalization of trade documents, for instance. The implementation of SDGs and in particular addressing the climate change will require massive investments. A regional perspective opens new perspectives, not only to pool regional resources, but also to assess the feasibility of opportunities, in particular in sectors that are capital intensive. This concerns, for example, cooperation in energy, transport, or environmental protection, infrastructural projects, which are areas where in different ways the UNEC is deeply engaged. So what we specifically work on are standards and norms, and normative developments can play a vital role in guiding the action of all stakeholders towards sustainability. For UNEC, as mentioned, this is a core business across its multiple areas of activities where we work closely with the member states to ensure that our norms and standards respond to existing needs and are generally accepted. So work at the regional level, including within existing sub-regional integration structures like Eurasian Economic Commission, can effectively support the adoption of international standards and the development and adaptation of regulatory solutions to meet their own needs. There is a genuine and growing interest in sustainability and the green transition in the private sector worldwide, which is translating into concrete actions. This creates a more auspicious background for the mobilization of finance, but in order to nurture this interest and increase the scale of private sector engagement, it is critical that normative guidance provides clear signals. Collaboration with the public sector is necessary to facilitate an alignment with sustainable development priorities and increase overall investment. And in this regard, actions at the regional level can contribute to improve normative context for private sector participation and provide new investment opportunities. Ladies and gentlemen, to conclude, it is clear that regional frameworks can be useful building blocks for multilateralism, which remains the only conceivable foundation for sustainable development. For building the future, we want for all everywhere. And importantly, as we seek to accelerate progress towards the SDGs, we need to ensure that solidarity within, but also across countries, delivers on the spirit of the 2030 agenda by leaving no one behind. For this fundamental aim, we need the contribution that all regional initiatives and sub-regional initiatives can make. So finally, I want to express my strong hope that together in our region, we can deliver on our collective and vital goals and targets of Agenda 2030. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Ms. Algayareva, for your very interesting speech. And I would like to agree with you with the conclusions, and also hope that really together in our changing world, we should move forward together, trying to strengthen the dialogue and to achieve the goals that are standing for us. And in this context, I would like to emphasize once again that we at the Eurasian Economic Commission are giving great importance to the strengthening of the dialogue between the integration associations. And in this context, I am very glad to announce that we have another speaker with us, Ms. Anel Bakit-Bekezi, the Deputy Permanent Representative of the Republic of Kazakhstan, who will share a speech not only on behalf of the Republic of Kazakhstan, who is one of the founding members of the Eurasian Economic Union, but also on behalf of the Conference on Interaction and Confidence Building Measure in Asia, with whom also we have signed a memorandum of understanding, and CISA Secretariat is one of our best partners, and soon we are going to sign a plan of action with CISA Secretariat. Ms. Anil, the floor is yours. I would like to thank you for being here today with us.
Thank you. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, at the outset, I would like to express my gratitude to the organizers of the side event for the opportunity to speak to such a representative audience. The partnership of SICA and the Eurasian Economic Union was established at the Astana SICA Forum on October 13 last year, with the signing of Memorandum of Understanding between SICA Secretariat and the Eurasian Economic Commission, and we highly value these relations. Today, SICA unites 28 member states in a platform for Pan-Asian dialogue. SICA proposes the most comprehensive agenda operating in 5 broad dimensions of cooperation: military, political, new challenges and threats, economic, environmental, and human. At the same time, at least 60% of the agenda of the meeting is made up of economic issues, which is a clear confirmation of the commitment of member states to practical cooperation. The popularity of economic dimension of cooperation among the member states within the SICA platform is determined by the fact that 2/3 of global GDP and world economy growth are today generated by the SICA member states. Implementation of CBMs under the economic dimension may be carried out under the following priority areas: small and medium enterprises, energy security, information technology, tourism, development of secure and effective systems of transportation corridors, agriculture, finance, trade and investment. Economic activities of SICA are closely related to environmental issues, social development and humanitarian cooperation. In 2021, 44 events have been implemented at the SICA platform, and 70 of them belong to the economic dimension. In 2022, 16 events of the 40 held at SICA were related to the economic dimension, including the conferences on microfinance for SMEs, cross-border e-commerce, and expansion of supply chain for SME products. Most active interaction has been seen in the areas of SMEs development, agriculture, and finance. Increasing attention is rightly paid to the issues of digitalization and the widespread introduction of information technologies. And most of the events conducted at the SICA platform are cross-sectorial in nature. This highlights the deep sense of ownership, the relevance and capacity of SICA, and in the interest of member states in promoting the forum and utilizing it to pursue national interests and strengthen cooperation and connectivity, which ultimately contributes to ensuring comprehensive security in Asia. Several speakers today mentioned different corridors, railways, and transport projects. Moreover, within SICA, we have an advisory body named the Business Council, which brings together representatives of business associations and public authorities of the member states. This institute is responsible for promoting the development and expansion of economic cooperations in small and medium entrepreneurship. In September 2023, a regular plenary meeting of the SICA Business Council and its business forum will be held on the sidelines of Almaty Investment Forum to consider issues of green financing, renewable energy, and food security. The COVID-19 pandemic, which caused significant damage to the global economy by disturbing supply chains, revealed the insufficient connectivity of the SICA member states. The Kazakhstan SICA chairmanship initiated the establishment of the Council on Sustainable Connectivity at the 6th Astana Summit. The ambitious task of this Council will be to develop and strengthen the transit and transport capacity and corridors of the member states, whose geography extends from the Red and Mediterranean Seas to the East China Sea and from Arctic Ocean to the Indian Ocean. To enhance global partnership and integrate into the regional architecture of international security, SICA is actively developing partnership with other regional organizations, such as Eurasian Economic Union, the League of Arab States, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, the Shanghai Cooperation Organizations, and OSCE, as well as the United Nations and its agencies. There are plans to establish relations with ASEAN and some other organizations. In conclusion, I would like to wish all the participants of the side event successful work, which I am sure will be reflected in significant practical results. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Anil, for sharing your speech. Vladimir Peroboyev is our next speaker. He is the head of project at the Center for Integration Studies at the Eurasian Development Bank. The Eurasian Development Bank is an international financial organization that promotes the integration and development of its member states, including the Eurasian Economic Union 5 countries. Vladimir, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, dear Chairman, Excellencies, colleagues. Thank you so much for the opportunity to represent the research department of the Eurasian Development Bank on this high-level political forum side event. Attention to the topic of sustainable development is increasing in the context of obviously worsening climate problems. Each region has its own priority SDGs, but for everyone without exception, especially for developing countries, the SDGs related to adaptation to climate change, land, water, and infrastructure are relevant. In this regard, I would like to draw attention on the Central Asia as one of the most promising regions in terms of the SDGs. And could you please show the presentation, if it is possible, the slide number 3. As the Eurasian Development Bank reports in its publicly available analytics, the Central Asia is a region with a high development potential, with an aggregate GDP of about $397 billion and a population of 79 million. Over the last 2 decades, Central Asia's aggregate GDP grew nominally more than 8-fold and 4-fold in real terms. Since 2000, the population has increased by a factor of 1.4, and over the last several years, it has been growing at 2% per year. According to the UN estimates, the average annual population growth rate in the region is projected at 1.1% until 2040. Demographics definitely favor sustainable economic growth in Central Asia. The average annual economic growth rate for Central Asian countries has been 6.2%, which is more than twice as fast as the world as a whole. At the same time, the next slide, please. The Central Asia is among the regions that are most vulnerable to climate change. Food supplies, water and energy resources are particularly sensitive to climate challenges. Temperatures are rising faster in Central Asia than the global average, leading to shrinking of glaciers, with their volume declining by nearly 30% over the past 50 years. This entails a likely decrease in river flow and creates risks for agriculture and food security in the region. Drying out of the soil can reduce crop yields by 30–50%. According to various estimates, climate change in the Central Asian region will have the most adverse impact on agriculture in Kazakhstan, especially in its northern regions, where grain is mainly cultivated. According to UNDP estimates, spring wheat production in 7 regions of Kazakhstan is expected to decrease up to 37% by 2030, with direct economic losses in the sector amounting up to $1.2 billion. Kazakhstan is one of the largest wheat exporters, both in Central Asia and globally. So if it fails to introduce enough climate change adaptation measures, the entire region food security is at risk as far as achieving of the relevant SDGs. The policy of adjusting to the change, in particular land reclamation and the introduction of moisture-saving technologies, will be of great importance. The countries of the region have great opportunities to intensify their agricultural production and improve land and livestock productivity by increasing the volume of fertilizers, raising the level of mechanization and automation, as well as ensuring more efficient use of water resources in Central Asia. The next slide, please. Effective water management is a key factor in agro-industrial development and thus in food security of the region. The Central Asian countries suffer from fresh water shortages and, according to the international classification, belong to the category of stressed countries. The level of water stress, it is SDG 6.4.2, is high at 81.5%, and by 2040 may grow considerably. The average water use efficiency is in the region is estimated at $2.5 per region per cubic meter, which is considerably lower than the global average of $19 per cubic meter. And the current situation in the water and energy complex of Central Asia is characterized by insufficient cooperation and substantial economic losses. According to expert estimates, annual economic damage and unrealized economic benefits may be as high as $4.5 billion, which corresponds to 1.5% of the region's GDP. If the region addresses the losses, I think next slide, please. Effective development of the water and energy complex in the region is one of the crucial tasks faced by the Central Asian countries. A fresh perspective on the water and energy complex involves a recognition of the importance of regional interests in order to improve its operational efficiency. The Central Asia integration processes for joint management of the water resources of transboundary rivers and power facilities has always been and remains a crucial factor affecting virtually all aspects of regional development. Stronger cooperation in water and energy management could reduce the costs incurred by the economies of the Central Asian countries and improve their competitiveness. Inasmuch as the Central Asia water and energy complex has poor investment appeal and profitability of related projects is too low from the viewpoints of private and foreign investors, multilateral development banks have been an important source of financial resources required to implement state-initiated complex development projects. According to Eurasian Development Bank's estimates, at the end of 2021, there were more than 104 ongoing MDB finance projects with a total value of more than $10 billion. For example, the combined Eurasian Development Banks, Eurasian Fund for Stabilization and Development, Eurasian Investment Banks, and Asian Investment Infrastructure Bank's portfolio stood at about $1.2 billion. The infrastructure of the Central Asia water and energy complex has substantial investment needs of at least $90 billion till 2030, about $9 billion per year.
Vladimir, I'm very sorry to interrupt you. We have only 10 minutes left. I would kindly ask you to conclude in order our two speakers also could share their short speeches. I'm very sorry for interrupting you.
Yes, I understand. Thank you. I'm finishing. And we see that the region needs more investment in the construction of and modernization of water treatment facilities and state-of-the-art water conservation technologies, development of new generation capacity, including hydropower plants, high-tech CCGT plants, solar and wind power plants, nuclear power plants. And accordingly, the Eurasian Development Bank intends to invest at least $400 million in the Central Asia water and energy complex until 2026. By the way, we see another one proposal is establishing an international water and energy consortium of Central Asia that would facilitate an effective dialogue with investors. Also on the next and the last slide, we would like to stress our last idea is the Eurasian Green Agenda as a platform that could represent the shared interest of the Central Asian and Eurasian regions countries and make a more compelling case at the international climate regulation forums. And this could make and could help coordinate the environment and climate interests and policies of the countries of the Central Asia and a wider Eurasian region. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much for your interesting presentation and speech. As we had a very limited time, I would kindly ask our next two speakers to have 2-3 minutes intervention. And I would like to give the floor to Mr. Tigran Galistyan, Deputy Permanent Representative of the Republic of Armenia to the United Nations. Tigran, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I want to thank you for convening this side event and Commission through you for convening this side event and your moderation. I also want to express our appreciation to all panelists for their comprehensive briefing on priorities for Eurasian Economic Union and efforts to localize and incorporate sustainable development goals in the Eurasian Economic Commission's work. I also would like to welcome Ms. Olga Algayarova, Executive Secretary of UNSC, for for her presence and her remarks. The disruption of global supply chains, imposition of travel restrictions, and border closures during the COVID-19 pandemic have resulted in reduction of trade and flow of essential goods and services, halting the progress towards the full implementation of the SDGs. At the same time, multiple challenges we face today highlight the role of the regional organizations and integration associations to ensure better response and minimize the negative impacts. As a landlocked country, Armenia faces additional constraints and attaches great importance to the advancement of regional and sub-regional cooperation through trade, transport, and connectivity. The principles of inclusivity, transparency, equal and non-discriminatory partnership, and respect for the norms of the international law should be at the center of our efforts to promote regional connectivity. Armenia pays special attention to the full implementation of SDGs, and in this regard, the work is being done to synchronize them with the national programs and development strategies. Armenia has already presented 2 voluntary national reviews in 2018 and 2020, and is considering to present the 3rd VNR next year. We believe that regional dimension of the sustainable development is also crucial to achieve 2030 agenda and regional integration platforms, as Eurasian Economic Union have the potential to ensure coordinated implementation of SDGs for enhanced results. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Tigran, for being here and for sharing your comments. And I would like to give the floor to Mr. Liu Likun, Counselor of the Permanent Mission of China to the United Nations. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator, for giving me the floor. First of all, let me thank the delegations of Russian Federation and Belarus for organizing this very important event. I believe that the theme of this event is well chosen and very relevant to the SDGs as we are approaching the midpoint and preparing for the SDG summit in September. As you know, China is working very closely and actively with our partners and friends in the Eurasia Economic Cooperation Union to promote the economic integration, trade facilitation, and infrastructure connectivity, including through the Belt and Road Initiative. And we have achieved a lot of tangible and fruitful results. One of them would be the China-Belarus Industrial Park. I believe that you all heard of that. And the SDGs is our common goal that requires, the global actions at different levels, including the regional levels. Besides Eurasian Economic Union, we have also working closely with the ASEAN and with Central Asia countries. As you know, in last May, we successfully hosted a summit between China and 5 Central Asia countries. So I listened very carefully to the comments by the ambassadors, ministers, and also the panelists. They raised a lot of important issues. For example, the energy security, food security, the updated international financial systems, and other things. I think that China could, work even better with our partners and the friends within the region to, under the framework of the BRI initiative, to promote the so-called 5 connectivities. That is our policy coordination, trade facilitation, financial integration, people-to-people exchanges, and the infrastructure, of course, most importantly, infrastructure connectivity. So China is always ready to make our joint efforts with our partner countries toward that end to achieve the SDGs. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I would like to emphasize that China is a very important partner for all members of the Eurasian Economic Union and for the Eurasian Union. As you know, plan which was signed with our Chinese partners, and I would like to thank you again to be here. It is important for us because I repeat, China is an important partner for us. Dear colleagues, summing up our today's event, I would like to once again thank all the speakers for the interest, ideas, suggestions, presentations, and I think our next meeting will be on the sidelines of the SDG summit at the UN in September this year. I'm sure the suggestions that were raised today during our panel will be analyzed and discussed at the Eurasian Economic Commission, and we will move forward together in order to reach the implementation of the SDGs, because as I mentioned, in the changing world, it is important to move forward together to find solutions to the difficult questions that we get every day. Thank you very much. I wish you everyone a nice day. And I would like once again to thank my colleagues from Russian Federation for assisting to organize today's meeting. Thank you very much. Wish you a productive day.
Thank you.